Introduce you to our moderator for this session, who is Dr. Ashish Shukla, former IG Police, CRPF, and his academic teaching and research experience spans from 1993 to date. He has held multiple positions in management education since 2014 as head director, regional head, HOD, and professor with various eminent organizations. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Thank you. And now I would like to invite our eminent speaker for this panel discussion, Mr. Christopher Turello, co-founder, MEDA Foundation. Please put your hands together, audience. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you. Our next panelist is Mr. Anil Nair, Senior Fellow, Porcelains Institute, Washington, D.C., and founder Think Street. He is joining us online. Mr. Prateek Pant, Chief Business Officer, White Oak Capital Management. Thank you for joining us, sir. And last but not the least, Mr. Abhilash Mishra, Chief Executive Officer, NSE Academy Limited. So now let's begin with the discussion. Thank you.
I feel fortunate to moderate this discussion on youth. With me on the panel are Dr. Navneet Sehgal. Okay. So, for some reasons, for some technical reasons, he's not able to join online. Let us hope and wait if he is able to make it. He is Additional Chief Secretary, Government of UP for Youth and Sports. We have with us Mr. Anil Nair. He is also joining online. He is Senior Fellow of Portland Trust in US. Held many positions at board level and managing director. He has been awarded for professional excellence by Indian Institute of Industrial Engineering and Udyog Ratna Award. We have with us Shri Prateek Pant. He is Chief Business Officer, White Oak Capital Mutual Funds, having a varied and rich experience in banking and financial services. He is an engineering graduate and then turned to financial management, having done his master's in that. Another panelist having a very relevant background to youth is Mr. Christopher Turello. He is co-founder of MEDA, having done MBA from University of Chicago and MA in International Development from SAIS US. His forte is youth empowerment, and he has led, I'm happy to place it on record, that he has led more than 85,000 youth to empowerment, and his startup has done such a great job. So I start with Okay. He'll be okay. So can you
Yeah. So we also have Mr. Abhilash Mishra from who is the Chief Executive Officer in SE Academy, and we welcome all our panelists on the dais today. And it's as first of all, apologies to all of you because we are running, also to Mr. Nair, because we are running a little behind schedule. So we will certainly want a very crisp deliberations here, and to begin with, because Mr. Anil Nair has already joined online, so I would request him to start his address to the gathering, please. So over to Mr. Nair, Anil Nair.
Good afternoon to all of you. Can you hear me, Praveen?
Yeah, we are able to hear you, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
A very
you.
good afternoon to all of you. Thank you to Awoke and Praveen for inviting me to speak at IFLC 22. My pleasure indeed. The subject I will talk about will be the agenda for digital and financial inclusion for India's youth. So I want to touch upon three aspects of it. Okay, one is youth in the context of India's total population. Second is how the youth can be equipped. And third, the digital divide which is staring us in the face and which has to be tackled. So let me go with the first. If you look at the population of India, it's about 1.4 billion now. And if you look at the constituents of that 1.4 billion, or the composition of those 1.4 billion population, the people born after 2000 are generally referred to as digital natives. And they're called digital natives because they have been born and brought up amongst computers, video games, digital music players, and cell phones. They are digital natives because their thinking patterns are very different. So in their minds, they're able to do parallel processing, they're able to multitask, they work best when they network, they love graphics. They are differently equipped because of the time that they were born in. Some are digital entrepreneurs, and many are influencing organizations across the globe. But apart from that, we also need to look at the other constituents of our population. The older population, we are digital immigrants because we are trying to catch up. We were not born to that age, but we have to catch up. And many of us are being able to do that well, some are not. And then you have people called the digital refugees. Now, when you talk about digital refugees, you mean people like blue collar workers, where the onslaught of Industry 4.0 has left them far behind, with artificial intelligence and machine learning and so on and so forth. And then you have the digital outcasts, and all these terms are not mine. They are generally used terms, and digital outcasts are those of an older age or who need some rehabilitation of the sort, but they have served a very important purpose in connecting our senses with the surroundings. So you have a lot of now brain-controlled computers, smart shoes, alternative communication like text-to-speech and all that, which is happening because of the challenges they face. Now, moving on, how do we equip our youth with digital skills? Okay, if you look at the UN definition of youth, it is between 15 and 24 years. And the great thing about the youth is that they are much more online than the rest of the population. So globally, if 71% youth are digitally connected, the overall population level would be 48%, a little behind. When we talk about digital and financial literacy, we have to talk about what happens at the primary level, secondary level, higher education level, as well as financial literacy in the same breath. So if you look at primary education, generally what is prescribed is at least that there should be basic computer skills, which is hardware, software, and troubleshooting and things like that. Keyboarding skills and tools like word processing, spreadsheets, and presentations. The second aspect of it is internet-related skills. And third is a computational approach, as it were, which means being able to divide a problem into simple parts, being able to purge what is irrelevant, a logical sequencing, because that's what's required for coding and algorithmic design and so on. So, if you look at secondary education, when you talk about digital literacy, which has to start there, it has to include critical thinking. It has to include understanding of online behaviors. It has to include copyright violation and understanding of all of that in the secondary stage. And in the higher education institutes, if you go by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, essentially it is to make the youth contributors to a knowledge economy. So it talks about much more than just what we can think of. It includes environmental understanding. It talks about economic viability. It talks about a just society. It talks about cultural diversity, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to digital education, there is a lot of emphasis on online savviness, meaning being able to understand what is identity theft, what are scams all about, what is phishing, and so on and so forth, what is cyberbullying all about. There has to be some understanding about information use and misuse, and also health related risks, which are relating to addiction, societal disengagement, and so on. Again, if you look at the OECD report of the G20 countries, when they talk about financial literacy, they're talking about awareness, knowledge, skills, attitude, behaviors, all combining so that the person can take sound financial decisions. And looking at the huge advancements in technology, particularly in BFSI, which is banking, financial services, and insurance, so many tech innovations taking place, including proliferation of cloud computing and big data. It's important that the digital education that we talked about in the previous part is combined with the financial literacy for it to be complete. The other recommendation of the OECD and the G20 country, a report which is called the Advanced Digital Financial Inclusion of Youth 2020, suggests that there should be a great deal of youth focus. First, participation of the youth in policymaking. Second, the use of financial data of the youth when they're doing research. And third is the youth-friendly design in financial products. So bring a lot more involvement of the youth so that the products that emerge are also youth-friendly. And finally, the third point that I wanted to make was about the digital divide. About 2.9 billion people in the world, which is more than a third of the world, is still unconnected. Even in India, if you look at the internet connectivity, if you look at the numbers, the estimates vary from 650 million to 800 million, which is a little below 50% or a little over 50%. Not that there aren't any government programs. There are dozens of government programs facilitating digital transformation in the youth and generally in the population. For instance, we had BharatNet, which was introduced in 2011, which is about fiber connectivity at panchayats. We had the National Digital Literacy Mission, which was 2014. We had Digital India, various initiatives in 2015. We have the PM Digital Grameen Saksharta Abhiyan, which was in 2017, which was about rural digital literacy. We have the PM eVidya, which is, the learning for schools up to the 12th standard, which is in 2017. And more than that, now you had Kerala, and then the Supreme Court saying that the right to internet is a basic human right. That was in 2019. But to sum up, at the end of the day, it's the execution that matters. There are multiple programs that are happening in India. And to summarize, we have digital natives, which are the younger population, the youth, and they are our future. We need to focus much more on them. The digital financial inclusion and literacy must cover both digital education as well as financial literacy at the primary, secondary, and higher education levels. And most important, we must address the digital divide in India, because otherwise you have a whole generation which has no access to financial solutions or e-commerce or education. That's my summary. Back to you, Praveen. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for enlightening us with the concept of digital natives. That is, the very classifications are a recipe in itself for financial inclusions. And it was very enlightening session with you. We are slightly running off the schedule. So with that, sir, thanking you, I invite the next speaker, Mr. Prateek Pant, to come up on the dais with his ideas. Thank you.
I request Mr. Nair to please hold on, because in the end we would also need a couple of points if he could suggest what organizations like us should do on the ground. So if you have time, would you like to just share right now, or you will wait for some, I think.
I will wait, Praveen.
Thanks so much, sir.
नहीं ठीक है thank you. Good afternoon everyone. So Christopher, with your permission, I'll do a little bit of English presentation because if I'm in Lucknow, अंग्रेजी में presentation करना थोड़ा सा अजीब लगता है. So हमारा जो topic है यहाँ पे उसमें 3 भाग है. एक of course अनिल जी ने जब शुरू किया अपना presentation, he spoke about the youth. We talked about digital transformation, and the third aspect is financial management. So संक्षेप में I'll try and talk about these 3 aspects, which is what actually defines this particular topic. ये आप लोगों ने जरूर देखा होगा, राइट? जब मैं यूथ था तो लेफ्ट हैंड साइड में आप जो देखते हैं कैसेट्स और डीवीडी और ऑडियोज, यही हमने किया था. बट आज के तारीख में व्हेन यू लुक एट द सेम डिवाइसेस, दे हैव एक्चुअली बीन कन्वर्टेड इनटू स्ट्रीमिंग डिवाइसेस. सो यू गॉट नेटफ्लिक्स, Amazon Prime, Spotify, Apple Music, which are classic part of the today's youth generation, which is what we were talking about. Now, when you look at the demographics, right? और ये मैंने कोई geographical map नहीं बनाया है, so I don't want to get into a controversy around this. But this is as per population, right? India is actually the second largest populous country, and if you had to draw the world map again, you will find India is much larger than most of the other countries out there. Also, मेरे से पहले जो speakers हैं, they have actually spoken about our demographic dividend, right? The fact that we will be the second largest the largest working population in the world in the next few years. Not just that, there's a rising middle class. Affluence में अगर आप देखेंगे आज के तारीख में, middle class is consuming a lot more. But at the same time, of course, as Anil ji spoke about it, there is also the elderly population, which is rising at the same rate as which the population from a youth perspective is growing. एक ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग सर्वे था, और ये सर्वे होता है हर 10 साल में, टू फाइंड आउट विच आर द न्यू एरियाज विच आर इमर्जिंग फ्रॉम अ जॉब पर्सपेक्टिव. ये वर्ल्ड इकोनॉमिक फोरम ने अपना 3rd सर्वे किया था, और ये 2020 की फाइंडिंग्स हैं. अगर आज के यूथ को एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी देखनी है, विच आर द एरियाज वेयर देर आर रियल जॉब्स अवेलेबल एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, नॉट सरप्राइजिंगली all the top 10 areas listed out there have some sort of digital connection, right? Whether it's data analytic, we're talking about big data, AI, business transformation, software, IoT, Internet of Things. So clearly, areas of technology is where you're seeing a lot of job creation happen at this point of time. While the regular, mundane, clerical roles, accounting roles are areas where you expect actually jobs to get displaced. So people, when you look at हमारे जो यूथ को आगे क्या देखना है, what are the skills which they need to absorb, a lot of these skills are around in the area of technology. Having said that, केवल टेक्नोलॉजी ही नहीं है जो which will drive this agenda. There are many softer areas which are also being talked about in this, right? Areas like resilience, stress tolerance, flexibility, ये सब जो है, these are equally important as the area of technology which is there. I think what is driving this entire revolution at this point, और हमारे जो पहले जो इंट्रोडक्टरी पैनल्स थे उन्होंने इसके बारे में काफ़ी बताया, तो इसलिए मैं ज़्यादा बताऊंगा नहीं, बट जैम के बारे में बताया था, जनधन, आधार, मोबाइल. दिस इज द रेवोल्यूशन विच इज एक्चुअली ड्राइविंग द एंटायर डिजिटल एजेंडा एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम. Of course, there have been many financial inclusion initiatives which are there. And finally, data explosion. So we have seen probably the best payment infrastructure in the world, not just among emerging countries, but globally today you have the best payment infrastructure. The board member from SEBI did give data about what type of payment transactions have actually happened during the last month itself, right? It's no longer in millions and billions. is what monthly transactions are happening when you actually look at our UPI infrastructure. Of course, COVID was one of the largest triggers, right? That is how volumes of transactions, which you can see out here, आज के तारीख में, and these are expanding at the rate of 100% per month in terms of the growth of these UPI transactions. एक बहुत important factor इसमें जो रहा है is the explosion of smartphone. 5G network has been launched recently. और एक अगर आप उस तरफ देखें आका, the data cost in India is actually lowest in the world, right? So the type of economies of scales which are required to drive this type of a revolution is something which is easily available at this point. So digital adoption, I don't think is an option right now, but it is actually a compulsion, right? Because today, अगर हम ये नया इक्वेशन देखें, राइट, हाँ, काफ़ी इक्वेशन हमने फिजिक्स में, केमिस्ट्री में सब देखे हैं, बट ये आज की तारीख का जो इक्वेशन है, जो इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ ऑफ अ नेशन है, उसमें एक तरफ जरूर आपकी डेमोग्राफिक्स आती है, बट दूसरी तरफ टेक्नोलॉजी ग्रोथ उतना ही इंपॉर्टेंट है, राइट? बोथ ऑफ दीज फैक्टर्स आर इंपॉर्टेंट, एंड दैट्स वाई जो मैंने जब अपने कॉलेज में नियो क्लासिकल इकोनॉमिक थियोरी जो समझी थी डिमांड और सप्लाई का, उसमें आज के तारीख में एक टेक्नोलॉजी एक नया तीसरा कोण आ जाता है, विच एक्चुअली drives the true demand of any nation. The scope of when you talk about digitalization is not just जो आप e-commerce में देख रहे हैं, right? कि आपने Amazon देखा या Flipkart देख लिया या Cartrade देख ली या कोई जो वेबसाइट्स देख ली, उसी को डिजिटल नहीं कहते हैं. डिजिटल आज के तारीख में हर भाग में हमें हर भाग में आपको मिलता है. और हमने 3 ब्रॉडली एरियाज बोले. एक जो होता है जो कंपनीज टेक्नोलॉजी और इनोवेशन बना रही है इंडिया के लिए, राइट? और हमारा जो सॉफ्टवेयर सेक्टर है आज, इट इज द लार्जेस्ट एक्सपोर्ट अर्निंग्स इन द कंट्री, इज ड्रिवन एक्चुअली बाय द टेक्नोलॉजी सेक्टर. सेकंड, आप लोगों ने आज की तारीख में मेरे ख्याल से अपने फोन में एप्स आप देखेंगे तो आप ऑटोमेटिकली देखेंगे कि देयर आर सो मेनी न्यू एज डिसरप्टिव बिजनेस मॉडल्स विच आर अवेलेबल, एंड मोर इंपॉर्टेंटली ऑल्सो इवन विद इन ट्रेडिशनल सेक्टर आज के तारीख में. जैसे आपने तनिष्क का नाम तो सुना ही होगा कंपनी का, राइट? तनिष्क ने एक कंपनी एक्वायर की, कैरेट लेन, उसमें 72% स्टेक लिया है, तो आज की तारीख में ज्वेलरी भी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट होती है उसके थ्रू. सिमिलरली अगर आप बैंकिंग सेक्टर की बारे में जैसे बात हो रही थी BFSI स्पेस में, राइट? BFSI में जिस तरह का इनोवेशन हुआ है, सारे के सारे बैंक्स आज के तारीख आपके पॉकेट में मिलते हैं, राइट? सो ऑल 3 एरियाज, वेदर इट्स बिल्डिंग टेक्नोलॉजी, वेदर इट्स लुकिंग एट न्यू एज बिजनेस मॉडल्स, और एक्चुअली लुकिंग एट businesses which are using technology in driving and changing traditional businesses, तीनों चीजों में आपको डिजिटलाइजेशन का एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल दिखाई दे रहा है. डिजिटल इज नॉट अबाउट सेविंग कॉस्ट. पहले तारीख में क्या होता था कि हमने कंप्यूटर इंट्रोड्यूस किया है तो ऑटोमेटिकली एफिशिएंसी आ जा रही है बिजनेसेस में, बट इट इज नॉट जस्ट अबाउट ड्राइविंग एफिशिएंसी. और एक ये मैकेंजी का सर्वे आया था अभी 2017 में, दिस इज नॉट अबाउट पैंडेमिक. 2017 में जब मैकेंजी ने सर्वे किया था कि कौन सी कंपनीज हैं जो डिजिटल यूज कर रही हैं, एट दैट टाइम दे सेड दैट डिजिटल इज नाउ बिकमिंग अ सोर्स ऑफ स्ट्रैटेजिक एडवांटेज फॉर कंपनीज एंड नॉट जस्ट अबाउट सेविंग कॉस्ट्स. सो इन दिस टाइप ऑफ एन एनवायरमेंट, व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट फाइनेंशियल मैनेजमेंट एंड यूथ, what is the role the youth is playing into this? Of course, they are consuming a lot of digital, as the definition which Anil ji gave, they are digital natives, right? But there are also many other practices which are happening simultaneously. If you look at investing, right, and I come from a financial management background, within the area of investing today, right, there is huge penetration, not just in a Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, but whether it's Lucknow, Moradabad, Gorakhpur, everywhere you find the same level of digital penetration. The number of DMAT accounts which have opened in these tier 2 cities have started exceeding what is there in the tier 1 locations right now. So the true Bharat is actually the representative even in the investing world. Profile क्या है ये typical millennial digital native investor का, right? वो investor होता है जो online आता है सीधे, उसको जाके कोई form नहीं भरना पड़ता है. He places all his orders on the app, right? Not even not even your laptop. They use your app for actually placing all these orders. They're quite aware of what is happening in the world. तो वेदर इट इज गुड और बैड इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग. अगर क्रिप्टो में पैसे दिख रहे हैं, इंडिया में अगर 10 करोड़ क्रिप्टो में अकाउंट्स खुल चुके हैं, राइट, दैट इज ऑल पार्ट ऑफ दिस न्यू इन्वेस्टर बेस विच इज देयर. दे यूज अ लॉट ऑफ इंटेलिजेंस. अपना डिसीजंस खुद लेना चाहते हैं, DIY प्लेटफॉर्म है उनके, और ऑफ कोर्स उनका जो रिस्क रिवॉर्ड का जो इक्वेशन है, लगता है कि मतलब पैसा हर 3 महीने में डबल हो सकता है, राइट? अगर कोई मुझे, जब मेरे काफ़ी लोगों से जब बात होती है कि मैं कहता हूँ इक्विटी मार्केट, और सेबी के बोर्ड मेंबर ने एक बहुत बढ़िया ऑब्जर्वेशन किया था कि लॉन्ग टर्म इक्विटी वेल्थ क्रिएशन होता है, और उन्होंने कुछ 15% रिटर्न की बात की थी। यहाँ पर लोग आके 15% महीने की रिटर्न की बात करते हैं, राइट? सो दैट इज द प्रोफाइल टुडे ऑफ अ टिपिकल मिलेनियल इन्वेस्टर. द प्रॉब्लम इज, right, and this is very important as a phrase, when tech tools are too good, then investors may suffer. And there is a survey which was done in US, right? This is one of the robo advisory firms called Sigfig, right? उन्होंने ये कहा था, people who actually log in every day and are looking at their trading accounts on an average earn 0.2% less returns in the previous year than the people who are actually, checking it more on an infrequent basis. और जो twice a day करते हैं उनकी actually return और भी कम होती है, right? So the fact is the propensity of starting to transact rather than invest is a lot more which you find when you become a victim of all of this. So what are the real threats? And again, Anilji did speak about some of these things, right? The spread of disinformation. You've seen lot of, just couple of days back, you've seen a big cyber attack which has happened on one of the agencies. You're seeing a lot of information overload. आप अगर अपना स्क्रीन टाइम देखें, ऑन एन एवरेज लोग 4, 5, 6 घंटे 7 घंटे बिता रहे हैं अपने आईफोन पे या अपने सैमसंग फोन पे, राइट? एंड मोर इम्पॉर्टेंटली, आई थिंक देर इज अ लॉट ऑफ लॉस ऑफ typical traditional lifestyle and values. So what are some of, is it all doom and gloom? Is it that digital is an enemy which you need to embrace? No, I think digital actually has a lot of other things to offer. And in our understanding, and when we look at it from an investment world, we've seen digital becoming a very, very important tool for making decisions. आप research देख लीजिए, right? Research में, whether it is analyzing investments, looking at systematic investment plans, analytics of stocks, there are many, many websites which are available, including Advisor, Coach, Value Research, all of them who are, who actually provide authentic information. Aggregators हैं काफ़ी, जैसे Daily Hunt है, उससे आपको news मिल जाता है, या InShots, podcasts, which are sources of some amazing information. I love this app called Blinkist, right? It gives you summary of some of the top books in 15 to 20 minutes, right? So there are many of these type of things which are there. Financial management apps are there, right? And this actually helps you plan for things. Free courses are available in Coursera, right? जिसमें आपको कोई formally, 1-2 लाख रुपए का कोर्स करने की जरूरत नहीं है. Similarly, Udemy, right, which is actually an academy which is available online to be able to do, and many of these things are available, and all these resources are there. Similar, right, is another types of productivity man. So when I have gone and spoken to students, and this is very important, मेरी बेटी इसी साल कॉलेज गई यूएस में, तब वो जब जा रही थी तो मैंने उसको ये चीज़ें बताई, right? These are things which is my personal experience. I told her कि आपकी ये पॉकेट मनी है इस साल, right? इस पॉकेट मनी में you need to find how you create your own budget. How do you track your expenses, right? Take advantage of students' discount. Peer pressure is something which is important, right? And more importantly, always invest in yourself. Learning is an important facet of this. So this is an 18-year-old daughter who's gone to college this year, and this was my message to her as she was leaving India. So in nutshell, really, right, an investment in knowledge actually pays the best interest, and it's important to just keep learning. If, I know we were quoting our Prime Minister on, even in the first forum, but I really like this, which was said right in the beginning, right? It is very, very important. We are in a very sweet spot in India. The demographic dividend in India is absolutely phenomenal. But people will have to change as per the changing requirements. And technology and digitization is going to play a very, very important role. वो आपका दोस्त है या दुश्मन, वो फाइनली आपको देखना पड़ेगा आपके अपने नजरिया से. Thank you.
Thank you, Pratik ji, for a very enlightening and discussion, rich of analytical tools, database and all. The house stands enriched by your talk. I call upon now Chris to touch a few points, especially India being a rich country as far as youth is concerned, and initially when the presentations were there, we have seen a clip of Honorable Prime Minister with the women Sakhi workers, a good experiment and a good initiative of women empowerment. So I'll request Chris to provide us a recipe also of how the women can be a path leaders in this financial inclusion, and what tools we can use. One of the speakers has, I think, yeah. So it was there that in the UPI transactions, women participate more of the in the UPI transaction. So these are the things on which I'll call upon Mr. Chris to dwell and focus his talk. Over to Chris.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Evoke, for having me here. And I do not have as prepared talking points, I think, as the previous two speakers, so this will be a little bit more off the cuff. But a couple of reflections or thoughts that, you know, and सबसे पहले मेरी हिंदी अच्छी नहीं है, तो मैं अंग्रेजी में बात करेंगे. I will try maybe कभी-कभी, you know, हिंदी शब्द, you know, अंदर में, but लेकिन पूरा अंग्रेजी बात करेंगे mostly. So apologies to the panel on that front. But yeah, I thought that I would just maybe try to, like on the previous panel, I think one of the speakers tried to make the comments of others maybe a bit more micro or kind of contextualized. Perhaps I will try to do the same here, because I think both of the previous panelists have spoken more at a macro level about, you know, kind of what's going on in the country and obviously in this part of the country as well. And I've had the privilege, and at MEDA, we've had the privilege of working with a lot of young people over the last 10, 11 years, day in and day out, as they try to prepare for their futures and try to prepare for their careers. We primarily work with this digital native group of young people, people between the age of 17 to 24, while they're still in some form of education, typically an ITI, an Industrial Training Institute, a polytechnic, or a degree college, all government and government-aided institutions across UP, Bihar, and Haryana. So we've seen firsthand how I think this shift from millennials to Gen Z has kind of changed in terms of how young people have been more digitally native from the beginning, how they have grown up with smartphones, with access to the internet. 4G obviously has played a big role in that. COVID has also played a very big role in that. But I think at the same time, we've seen that just because they have access to a device or have access to information doesn't mean that they're able to perhaps utilize it or use it for their own, you know, kind of productive or career aspirations and things that they're looking to build in the future. So I think that even though the gap will be a lot quicker and a lot faster and the learning curve is a lot shorter, there's still a lot of work that is required to, I think, address a lot of the concerns that were raised previously in terms of how do you know what is good information, what is bad information, how do you make sure that you're not, you know, falling prey to certain scams and things that are going on, and those are only increasing day by day, and how do you actually use technology in your day-to-day, whether it's to learn while you're still studying, whether it's to search for career opportunities, whether it's to build skills that you may need to succeed in your career. I think that all of this is really the responsibility of parents, teachers, role models, older mentors and peers, that we all have to play a very active role in doing that. Because just because you grow up with a phone or grow up with internet access doesn't mean that you're inherently able to, take advantage of it and use it for what it can be used for. So I think that, that is the experience that we've seen, and, even with students and young people who maybe are from that generation, many of them have not used a computer before. They maybe have used a smartphone before, but they haven't actually used a computer before. So doing something like productivity tools, before people were talking earlier about Word and Google Docs and other productivity tools, that's very much lacking, even though they may have access to PhonePe or Paytm, or be able to make an investment online. So the kind of full skill set that may be required to, like I said, kind of get into the job market and succeed, I think is something that we have to think about. And I think sometimes the challenge is that the parents of this generation are not digital natives, as the first speaker mentioned. So that mentorship and that guidance, and in many cases, teachers and other people in the community are not as well. So a lot of times young people are kind of on their own to learn this. So that's where these peer networks and community networks, we think, especially at MEDA, become very important, so that young people can learn from one another about the do's and don'ts of doing things online. And that includes, obviously, financial transactions, financial decisions that they're making, and the like. Just quickly to address Dr. Shukla's, kind of point, I think, honestly, when it comes to women entering the workforce, I'm probably not in the best position to speak on, young women's behalf. Maybe next year we can have a young woman from, the MEDA alumni community come and speak. They're really in a better position to do that. But I think one thing that, we have seen in our experience, in about 60% of our students are women, actually, which was not something that we intended from the very beginning, but ended up being something that became a big part of our work, is that in order to create a low-risk kind of enabling environment for women to join and participate and kind of stay in the workforce, I think one thing that we've seen work is these real short-term, on-the-job kind of internship work experiences, and doing them in very low-risk ways, where it could be just for 100 hours getting some kind of experience. And what we've seen is that also makes it easier for employers to agree to that. It makes it easier for parents to agree to something like that, and they don't have to convince their parents that I'm going to join the private sector full-time and this is what I'm going to do, which, as many of you know, may be a challenging conversation or negotiation to have with your 22-year-old, 23-year-old daughter who just finished a BCom or just finished a polytechnic diploma. But if they are interested in experimenting and exploring the private sector, then I think these short-term internships, and there's more and more of them these days, we've seen over time has led to full-time participation in the workforce and made it more easy for those negotiations to happen. And similarly, I think work-from-home opportunities, and COVID has really created an environment where the only option is not a 9-to-5 career that requires you maybe to travel each day and to go to an office space, which for a lot of young women that we work with is a very difficult proposition and negotiation, again, to have at home. But being able to work from home, being able to work part-time, a lot of the freelance kind of gig economy opportunities that are growing and growing every day are presenting a bigger opportunity for young women to participate and take part. And I think if you ask a lot of the women students and alumni that we work with, what is their aspiration, what do they want, one of the very first things they will say is financial independence. And financial independence is always at the top of that list, because they really feel constrained by the idea that I have to rely on my parents for money, I have to rely on my older siblings for money, and that makes it difficult for me to pursue the passions and interests that I may have if I don't have those financial independence to do that. However, at the same time, they, for the most part, may struggle to think about how to achieve that. Financial independence is not something that just comes with your first job. It's not something that just comes by getting, your first 10,000 rupee job, for example. You have to save. You have to make financial contributions to your family. You have to think about, how am I planning for my future? You have to think about how that income is going to grow over time, and how is my career going to grow? Because, 10,000 rupees today is not what it was 5 or 10 years ago. So I think all of this is something that, we think about at MEDA, and I think, hopefully other people in society in general are thinking about, is how do you support young people on that journey to financial independence and creating an environment where they are able to save on their own, they are able to make their own kind of financial decisions, they have their own access to a smartphone, for example, and their own bank account where they're making some of those choices, and supporting their journey on that, as opposed to, kind of dictating how and when they should earn, where they should earn, how much they should earn. So I think the more that, we can all create that enabling environment for young people, the more they will, achieve what they're looking for on this path, without us kind of non-digital natives perhaps having to play too much of a role. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Chris. It was a wonderful insight, precisely from a practitioner's perspective, and we stand benefited by your thoughts and discussions. And I'm sure, these inputs will go a long way in policy initiatives and in theoretical formulations also. Taking the cues from the field and connecting the dots together for a bigger picture. So with this, I have another panelist, Mr. Abhilash, with me. So I'll request him to give his recipe for the youth. Please, most welcome.
Make a small announcement here. No, it's not on mute. So today being Thanksgiving Day, Chris was quite, obliging on us to have come, and he had some activity. So maybe another 10 minutes he'll be leaving. So I will ask you have to keep it very short, and then we will have, immediately after that, we will have lunch, and then next session will be at 2:45. So lunch will be reduced to 30 minutes. Earlier we had planned for 45 minutes lunch. We are actually behind schedule for almost 25-30 minutes. So over to you, Abhilash, please.
Thank you, Praveen. Namaste. Chris, thank you for that wonderful insight, and also Prateek. Prateek, I'm going to take your cue and talk little in Hindi. ये मेरी जन्मभूमि है लखनऊ, और मेरी कुछ समय तक कर्मभूमि भी रही है, तो बहुत खुशी है मुझे लखनऊ वापस आकर और आप सबसे मुलाकात करने की. Today is a day of sorts, Praveen, and I'm glad मैं यहाँ पे आज आ पा रहा हूँ, आप सबसे मुलाकात हो रही है. This topic is closer to our heart, my heart personally. Also the organization that I represent, National Stock Exchange and NSE Academy, bringing financial knowledge closer to our youth and the citizens in general. But आज का दिन बहुत ही जैसे कहते हैं लकी है मेरे लिए, क्योंकि एक तो होम कमिंग है, मैं वापस लखनऊ आया हूँ, प्लस आप सबसे सीखने का मौका मिल रहा है और अदर पैनलिस्ट से. दूसरी बात यह है कि मैं आई थिंक आई एम द ओनली रेयर केस जिसको दो पैनल्स पे रखा गया है, एक पैनल ये और एक पैनल शाम को. सो सम ऑफ यू जो अभी मुझे आप सुन रहे हैं, शायद कुछ चीज़ों का आप प्रिपरेशन सुनेंगे शाम को. मेरे को बहुत ज़्यादा प्रिपरेशन नहीं है इसके लिए. प्लस मुझे आज कुछ दो सीनियर कॉलीग से मिलने का मौका मिला जो लखनऊ के हैं, मिस्टर शाही एंड मिस्टर माथुर. सो आई एम ग्लैड आज यहाँ पे मेरी विजिट रही है. I was not prepared for this session, but I normally do a session for our youngsters in universities and college. I call it Are You Future Ready? मैं उसमें से कुछ information आपके लिए share करूँगा, and I hope it will be useful for you. And I'll keep it short, Praveen. It is but imperative कि digital adoption और technology को हम साथ लेके चलें इस life में. And I'm so glad प्रतीक ने वो slides दिखाए हमको. The way we have come in last so many generations. First was the जिसे कहते हैं ना, एक वाटर और स्टीम का इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन हुआ था, जिसे हम इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन 1 बोलते हैं. देन वाज द एडवेंट ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी, इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन 2. 20-25 साल पहले ऑटोमेशन आया, और अब जिसे हम बोलते हैं 4th इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन, विच इज़ द साइबर फिजिकल सिस्टम्स. Look at the life around you. It is not just your smartphone, but it is also stuff like healthcare, education, which is getting impacted by technology. Of course, internet, and I always say, where there is internet, there is a classroom. और पिछले 2 साल में कोविड सिचुएशन में बहुत अच्छी तरह प्रूव किया है कि इंटरनेट की एक्सेस से data being cheaper, it is not only access to Netflix and social media, but also access to knowledge. How our teachers and professors and academicians could actually overnight help our students across universities, colleges, and schools, continue the educational journey. I think that's something which we should really be proud of and applaud also at this scale in this country. Prateek very rightly touched on the point of future skills. I have it's exactly a slide in front, but I'm going to mention to you. World Economic Forum ने 2018 में एक report generate की थी, skills for the future, which Prateek very rightly said about 2025. And let me tell you where these topics today that we're talking about, financial literacy, financial education, financial independence, and technology of blending, they talk about 6 foundation skills. And a question मैं raise कर रहा हूँ, this is not a prescriptive talk here, this is just a question I want to pose to you. Our education system has some rough edges. कहीं ना कहीं इस तरह के deliberations और जो interventions हैं, हम use कर सकते हैं उन rough edges को remove करने के. सबसे पहले उन्होंने बोला literacy, this is basic education जो foundation होती है. Secondly बोलते हैं numeracy, number skills. Third is scientific literacy. Fourth, I must draw your attention to ICT, information and computer technology. This is where digital plays its important role. And next will come as a surprise to you, financial literacy. World Economic Forum talks about that financial literacy is a foundation skill that everybody requires. And the last is cultural and civic literacy. Appreciation of cultures and civic sense is an important factor. The landscape of jobs is changing, and look at the jobs that are emerging today. You may have knowledge about, like when we were growing up in our generation, English was a requirement. I still remember going to an English school or a convent school while it was expensive at that point in time, but our parents chose that. Similarly, digital, data, analytics, they will be the language of the future. अगर हम prepare नहीं कर पा रहे हैं अपनी next generation को, then it is a subject we should be dwelling on. I would have been happy to see more youngsters as part of this room today on this conversation to listen. But since some of the people here are seniors, my age and senior to me, I think we should be the ones taking this message back to our home, to our children, to our youngsters, to people we meet in our professions, and also schools and colleges and academic institutions that we talk to, that digital knowledge and financial independence are not exclusive, they are mutually inclusive. And I will tell you so. The first question is, we don't talk about money at home. हम में से कितने लोग इस कमरे में पूछ सकते हैं कि हम अपने बच्चों से जब वो बड़े हो रहे थे पैसे के बारे में घर में बात करते हैं. So happy that प्रतीक ने अपनी डॉटर को मैसेज दिया. My daughter is also going through the same phase. She's under undergrad. She gets pocket money and she has to save a certain part of the money at home in her SIP. We don't talk about money at home. Then how do we expect our kids when they enter into a working stream that they will have money sense, as we call it? They will understand what personal money management is all about. They may become CFOs of companies, manage crores and crores of balance sheets, but personal money management is a question they still don't understand. You may have friends who are lawyers, doctors, engineers, rich people, but simple cash flow, simple risk perception unke paas nahi hai, because the mainline job is the profession that they are good at. So how does this happen? At NSE Academy for last 20 years as part of National Stock Exchange, we have two primary missions. Number one is bringing new generation of investors to the market, and second is helping those investors get fair and transparent intermediation. The work that we do across schools, colleges, universities, higher education, corporates ensures that that learning curve continues. We also work on creating learning so that they get employability. It is also a question that we ask, and I'm happy somebody mentioned about the women. When a woman is educated and financially independent, it is not only an impact on that woman's life, but it's a generational shift for the next generation. Imagine a young woman who's getting a profession, who's educated, who gets a job. If she decides to marry in life, she will find an equal partner who's educated. is up to standard of her requirement. They will invest in their children's education. They will ensure that the livelihood and the career of their children is also ensured. So it is not only investing in women for their career and life today, but it is also a contribution to the next generation that we're doing. We have the largest demographic dividend. This is the point concerning youth and financial independence and digital knowledge. The World Health Organization says that we have the largest demographic dividend. People who are youngsters is large. It is but imperative that we start contributing to them, bringing knowledge to them. They are the ones who are contributing to the 5 trillion economy that we are aiming for. These aspects of discussion should be taken to them, closer to them, and ensure that the rough edges that we face in education system and employment are smoothened with the skills that they are learning. And as I mentioned, financial education and digital education are essential life skills, and the world is moving towards that. I will summarize by simply saying, please invest your time in passing on this knowledge to the next generation. Please engage youngsters. I'm very happy that Avok and Praveen and their entire team are working towards bringing this knowledge across the spectrum society. Very happy to be part of this conversation today, and thank you so much for patiently listening to me. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, Abhilash. I think what we will quickly do is that go back to Anil and ask him if he can share his one important thought or action point, which we at Evoke India and organizations like us can work upon for the coming year to ensure that our youth is prepared to take on the digital challenge, and how they are, able to take this responsibly. So, Anil, are you there online? Can we take your...
Yes,
Thanks.
I'm with you.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, we can.
So first, I was very happy to meet Abhilash after many years. So hi there. And I think essentially the first rule is there is no need to reinvent the wheel. As I see it, the government has already defined various areas and various sectors for interventions. And so it is good to pick one of them because the proliferation can be better. Second is the focus has to be on digital transformation, as we've heard in the course of this conversation. Because when we talk about digital transformation, then the outcomes are not incremental, they are exponential. We should talk about at least 10x of change, then it is worthwhile. And when we talk about digital transformation, we must also know that technology is only an enabler. There has to be a clear strategy in what you want to do and what you want to achieve. And technology is only an enabler. And I'm telling you, after spending more than 3 decades in the technology world. And whichever are the programs, they need to be very well defined, both in terms of what is sought to be done. So I prefer when the focus of the project is narrow and the times are short, but the impact is huge. So it has to be defined well and it has to be finished within a specific period of time. So let me give you an example. When I was in a previous job, we worked on the last mile connectivity for 20 villages in Palghar, which is about 125 kilometers outside of Mumbai. And when we did that, it was part of a larger project. It was done by IIT Mumbai to proliferate education in the rural areas. And they won the Global Mozilla Award that year for innovation when it looked at the spread of the project. Now, what we did was a small part of it, which was to provide Wi-Fi connectivity, last mile connectivity for the constituents living there. And then people living there were able to access various educational programs all the way up to the 12th standard, which is provided by Tata Trusts, if I remember correctly. And when we did the survey to figure out what was the impact, it was dramatic. And the dramatic improvement was because, first of all, students had access to organized notes. Second, they could catch up even if they did not attend their class. And you know, in the rural areas, there are issues relating to transportation, weather, and so on and so forth. But they were able to overcome all that because of the digital connectivity. And then I also noticed that there was a huge commercial side effect, in the sense there were a lot of entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, who were selling and reselling bandwidth in that area. And one of the other interesting projects that happened in that area was there they do these Warli paintings, you know, which are specific to that area of the country. And the Warli artists were being connected to globally to galleries in various parts of the world. And suddenly they were able to find a market for their art, which didn't exist before. Apart from it igniting a lot of student sponsorship campaigns. So I think digital intervention, and I can give you examples of digital interventions giving you exponential difference, whether it be in mining or wildlife sanctuaries or agriculture or utilities or pensions. So my advice to institutions like WORK would be, don't reinvent the wheel, focus on digital transformation, focus on exponential transformation, and you can certainly make a big difference.
Thanks,
The projects are well thought out and the outcomes are clear.
Thank you very much. I think wonderful, because what is very important is the intervention which is required, what already government is doing, and how we can just make it 10x with the technology enabling the efforts. That's what is something which is a take for us. I think in maybe 1 minute, Prateek, you were to share quickly your take on what would advise to organizations like us to work on in the field for the financial literacy and inclusion, and of course digitalization as an enabler.
I think Anil has already, covered it pretty well. The idea is always the whole the framework for digital is never about marginal, right? It's about what can be scalable, and when you were giving your introduction, you said that you've done 1 lakh, people you've reached out to, and you're planning to do 5 lakh in the next 3 years. That's what digital can enable, right? And so, as I said, digital can be a friend and an enemy, right? They use this millennium phrase, friend me, or something to talk about it, right? Where both sides of them are there. I think organizations like AWOK can play a great role in educating the youth out there, specific to our topic, of how the friend side of it, the productivity, efficiency side of it, can play a lot more role, and at a scale, because we're dealing with 1.5 billion people, 50% of them which are defined in that youth category, right? That can only happen through tools which are within a digital framework. So you're doing a great job, but you'll have to up the game multiple times to reach there.
Exponential transformation, as Anil said. Yes. So yes, Abhilash, over to you, please, on your take on this. Yeah.
I think most of the points are already covered. First of all, my congratulations to AWOK India and you, especially as a team leader, to initiate this. I think that the transformation, as Prateek mentioned, is reaching out to the masses, the youth. Also, not only talking about saving and investing, but also how to manage risk. It is important that our youngsters understand that investing in market is just not about stocks or derivatives, right? It can be a disciplined process for a long period, because you have the dividend of, or the benefit of age on your side if you are a youngster. You have long time, and the power of compounding never fails. So not only talk about saving, investing, and opportunities or basic financial education, but also understanding risk and how to manage it over a period of time will go a long way to ensure that our youngsters keep themselves involved with technology and digitalization, and also use these tools to be financially secure and financially independent in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I think Dr. Ashu Shukla has been CRPF IG dealing with a lot of youth in his tenure, in his different geographies, Chhattisgarh, Jamshedpur and all that. So I would also want his views personally, that during his interactions with the Jawans in CRPF, how has he found financial literacy levels, and because police is one area or who are protecting us, but they are somehow, because we have done all 75 districts of UP, we have done programs. So to you, over over to you, Dr. Shukla.
Thank you, Praveen. In fact, I was trying to be a good moderator and not pumping in my own ideas into the galaxy of speakers. It was a very interesting session with such a enlightened audience. Off stage also, we have outstanding people who have done a lot in their fields. And by my own experience, I would say that youth are the biggest assets, not only for India but for the world also. And India in 2030 and even beyond is going to play a big role in the world economy by providing empowerment to its youth. Youth and women are such, and those were the keywords for this session also. These are the two empowerments, and it's heartening to know that Avok Foundation is doing a great job in both fields, empowering, skilling, and educating women and youth, and taking a cue from Mr. Abhilash's talk. I would request that in the future conclaves that more and more number of students, maybe they are graduate students or postgraduate or doctoral students, they can be part of such conclaves. That will be mutually benefit. We'll get to know their insight. Recently, I was in one of the Economic Times forums in Delhi, and there the youth ambassador from South Africa, she was part of the speakers. So it was such a music listening to her, that what kind of brilliant thoughts and ideas they have. So that is one aspect we can certainly add into. And besides that, I would, as a moderator, I would sum up that the role of youth in any economy is paramount, and that is more relevant in developing economy like us, or in couple of years we are going to be developed economy. So that is one aspect we need to take care of, and the learned speakers from SEBI, financial institutions, the Additional Chief Secretary, the Honorable Deputy Chief Minister, they have touched upon all these aspects, that there are policy initiatives. UP is going to go for $1 trillion economy. India is heading for $5 trillion economy, and that way we are with other policy initiatives, with other diplomatic tools, we are going to play a larger role in world of future. So with that, I thank all the august speakers. Mr. Nair on screen, remotely joined us. A great thanks to him for his time and efforts. Mr. Prateek, Mr. Krish, who has to leave for his other engagement, Mr. Abhilash. We are honored to have you on the panel. With that, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's over to you.
Thank you so much. And it was indeed a wonderful session. And I really like the term frenemy. Like digital can be a friend and your enemy as well. It was really, I'm sure this term is going to take over the internet very soon. Now, ladies and gentlemen, now it's time for Memento. And to present a Memento, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Avdesh Agarwal, Divisional Chairman, IIA, to give, please, I request. Thank you so much, sir. Please join us on stage. Please present a Memento to Mr. Prateek Pant. Now I would like to invite Mr. VP Sahi, our Advisory Board Member, to to present memento to Mr. Chris. Well, Chris, he already left us, no worries. And now I would like to invite on stage Justice Sudhir Saxena, retired, our valued patron. And now I would like to invite Mr. T.N. Pandey, our valued patron, to present memento, Dr. Ashu Shukla.